Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me today. And actually, I'm not going to talk about Brexit. I'm sure there'll be a Q&A session. I've agreed to do that afterwards, which we may do. But the organisers asked me to talk about being brave, because there's this perception that somehow I've done something brave or courageous, which I find a very uncomfortable question and term, the whole concept of bravery and courage. Because I don't wake up every morning thinking, today I'm going to be brave, or today I'm going to be courageous. I wake up thinking, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to speak up if I see something wrong. Is that bravery? I would argue it's not. It's the way we should all be living our lives. It is an integral part of us being a heartbeat of our society, one that cares and is kind and is humane and understands that there are people within our society who disagree with us and have a different point of view. But then the organizer said, you must have done some brave things in your life to have ended up in this place. So I thought I'd take you back through the story that led to me being on the steps of the Supreme Court twice. I'll sort of skip through 4 times in my life when I look back and think I've been brave. And you'll see why I use that word to these specific episodes in my life. Some of you may know I grew up in what was British Guiana. I was born, as in most people growing up in a Commonwealth, with this idealistic view of Great Britain. It was El Dorado to us, even though El Dorado is supposed to be where in British Guiana. My mother had the Queen on the Wall, Wedgwood collection. We listened to BBC World Service. We had to speak proper English. The nuns, I went to a convent, made sure we knew all our proverbs and could pronounce T's whenever it existed in a word. By the age of 8, 9, 10, I couldn't get enough of Charles Dickens, of Wuthering Heights, of all these great British writers. So when my parents told me at the age of 10 that I'd be coming to England, I was so excited. But I was coming because my father, who was then a very activist lawyer, was instrumental in forming a political party against a dictator prime minister. You'll see there are a few echoes in my story. And my father wasn't the leader, but he was very instrumental in setting up the party. The leader was a wonderfully charismatic 32-year-old young man who unfortunately was killed in a car bomb. And my parents sat my eldest brother and I down, my brother was 2 years older than me, and said, you're going to have to be brave because you are the next on the list. We have discovered that you and your brother are the next targets. So we're going to have to send you to England to be safe. It had never crossed my mind that when they said that, they meant send me and leave me by myself in a boarding school in Eastbourne, in this tiny place where I had no idea of what the culture was like. I'd read it in books, and as you do, it was very idealistic. I remember arriving at Heathrow and thinking, it's grey. Driving down to Eastbourne and finally seeing, if any of you have been to Eastbourne, the flowers along the seafront in summer and thinking, oh, that's really lovely. I'm pleased I'm here and not in the places I'd driven through, which were grey. So I arrived there. My parents left me. At 11 years old, to have no concept of being away from the parents you adore, I had to be brave. I didn't understand why you had to use a fork a particular way around to eat peas. I didn't understand why we had to go to church on a Sunday morning to Church of England when I wasn't. There were many things that were really peculiar to me. But my brother, who was at Eastbourne College, I was at a small school, we were going to be brave for a little while. Then I got a letter from my parents saying it wouldn't be just a little while. Our Prime Minister or President at the time had actually brought in currency controls. I told you there are a few echoes here. Who knows, might not be that far-fetched in the UK in the future. But they said they couldn't send us any more money. They'd put aside a little bit of money for our fees for the next year or so. They got my uncle, who was in England, to buy a small flat. And I took it on myself that I was going to be brave and help my parents. So I devised a plan and thought what I'd do is I'd go to a charity shop and buy clothes that would make me look as old as possible, high heel shoes, practice walking around the flat, and then I'd go and get myself a job at one of the hotels in Eastbourne to help my parents. So at 14, coming on to, well, I wasn't quite 15, 14 years old, I thought my plan was start at the top of Eastbourne Seafront, the Grand Hotel, walk along to every single hotel until I persuaded one of them I was 16 and give me a job as a chambermaid. And I would go to school for a couple of hours in the morning, and then I'd work on weekends and I'd help my parents. I didn't see that as particularly being brave. I saw that as just being practical. So I walked into the Grand Hotel, and lo and behold, they said, go round the side. Yes, we're taking on chambermaids. And that's what I did for the next few years. I'd get up, go to work at 5 o'clock, then stop halfway to school in the local, there was a petrol station, change into my uniform, and go to school. And I learned the most extraordinary things through that job. So that one moment of being brave enough to walk into the hotel opened up so much for me. I discovered that people with money and wealth didn't necessarily have manners. I discovered that hotel rooms could be left like a pigsty, even though they had all this wealth and money. I discovered that what I thought was, because I so loved books, I thought people who would stay in a hotel like this must know the best books to read. So I'd sneak a look at the side of their beds to see Mills and Boons? The odd amazing book, obviously, Joyce, W.H. Auden, wonderful books. But then, yes, the odd book that I decided maybe wasn't the best taste. So that moment of bravery opened up so much to me in that time. Roll forwards to leaving and going to London to study law, because that's all I wanted to do. I'm very much my father's daughter. The law to me has always been a central principle in my father's life and in my life, not because it is a dry subject, because it stands up for the rights of people. It creates stability when societies are rocking. When there is this sense of who do you trust, the law is there to create a sense of path to a stability of the future. I've always seen the law as being much more than in a courtroom. So there I was in London, about to study my law degree, about to take my finals in my third year, and I was attacked the month before my finals. On campus, brutally sexually attacked. I couldn't walk for 7 months. That is the next time I had to be brave, because I had a choice to make. Do the people, the men who did what they did to me, win? Do they break me? Or do I find it within me to be brave and carry on? I didn't find it. I didn't find the bravery to return to the law, the thing I wanted to do more than anything. I tried to, but going back and the thought of it lost me all my strength. So the bravery I discovered in myself was to find a new path, to look elsewhere for something that would fulfill my life. That is what took me into marketing, because I discovered I was good at storytelling. I discovered I had an empathy with people to understand how to be able to talk about their products and their services and engage and build a to build a relationship between a customer and a business. Is that brave? Is finding a new path brave? We spend so much of our life deciding how we're going to live our life, what success looks like, what failure looks like. All those words are so limiting. To me, living life without a safety net is what is brave. To decide that you're going to take a risk. That first step, because if you do that, the rest tends to be tenacity. But bravery is deciding to take a step. Not a big step, but any step. Walking through the park, seeing someone crying. The decision to take time to pause and sit and talk to that person. The decision to speak up when you know a colleague is being bullied, or that someone is bullying your child at school, or that a politician is bullying a nation. Taking time to speak up when you know there is a risk that there will be a backlash, but still speaking up, still knowing that it is the right thing to do. So is bravery about those moments, or is it something you decide you're going to do? Is bravery about the way you're going to decide to live your life? To make every moment count? To speak up when others won't? Because rolling the clock forwards, the moment I think I discovered my deepest bravery was actually when I had my daughter. She's 31 years old now, but we forget that many years ago, in the 80s, our NHS was actually on its knees. There was a shortage of healthcare workers, there was a shortage of delivery staff in maternity wings, and my beautiful baby girl that I so longed to hold was due on a night when there was no one to deliver her. So she was starved of oxygen. Her mental age is still about 4 or 5, if that. Every person I met told me I should give her up. Because in those days, that's what you did. And I had to find the bravery to listen to my heart, to my mothering instinct, which said, you are wrong and I am right. That my daughter, my baby belongs with me. She is going to be the best that she can be, not because you are telling me what that best can be, but because she is going to be the best that she can be. So to fight the system, a system which was telling me that only if you had money and access to expensive lawyers and specialists could a baby, a child, have access to something called a statement when a few years later she was ready for school. How unfair is that? And that is when I started my first campaign. I campaigned for every child born to be able to have a statement if it is required. It resulted in the Special Needs Act in 1996. So I wasn't being brave for me, I was being brave for her. And every day of her 31 years, she has taught me about bravery. Because she has no physical disabilities, she's beautiful. But our society treats people with invisible disabilities very differently than it does for those you can see. She knows she is different. She knows that people treat her differently, but she is brave enough every day to get up and want to try to work and want to try and have friends and to want to try and be independent and live on her own. She is the brave one in our family, not me. I simply get up every day and do the best I can. Thank you.